Welcome to the Unit 2 of the course Introductory Statistics 1. My name is Salas Kujobaji. I will take you through this unit. Unit 2, Concept in Probability. You have 6 sections to work on, so we begin with section 1. Definition of basic terms in probability. What were we looking forward to? Well, by the end of this session, we should be able to define basic terms and concepts in probability, differentiate between a sample space and events, count number of elements in event set and sample space, and also compute basic probabilities by counting the elements in the event set and sample spaces. So let's get going with the basic terms. How will you define the term probability? Well, as we said, we are going to learn some basic terms in probability. So probability is a measure of the likelihood of occurrence of an outcome of an experiment. Yes, a measure of a likelihood or the chance of an occurrence of an experiment. And what are some of the terms that we want to talk about in probability? Basic ones, basic terms in probability. I want to begin with the first one. Experiment, because you just mentioned experiments in the definition of probability. What is experiment? Now, an experiment is a well-defined action that leads to a single well-defined result. Yes. What do you mean by an experiment? So if I have a coin and I toss the coin, it's an experiment, and that will lead to a well-defined result. If I throw a six-sided Ludo die, I'll be looking forward to the results. And that is an experiment. We have other experiments that we can think of. Can you think of any? Maybe you should be part of your own research. Now, in an experiment, those experiments or the experiment whose outcomes cannot be determined in advance is what we call random experiments. For instance, tossing a fair coin. We call it fair because we're not going to be biased. We cannot determine the outcome when the coin is tossed. I will call it random experiment, and so on. What other term do you have? Outcome. What is an outcome? Well, we mentioned an outcome also in the definition of the probability. Now, an outcome of an experiment is a result of that experiment. So when we make an experiment, the result of the experiment is what we call the outcome. And an outcome could be a single item or multiple items. For instance, when a fair coin is tossed, the outcome could be either we observing the head or the tail. You get it? That's an outcome. A die may also be thrown. When a die is thrown, you could observe a particular outcome, maybe a 2 or 3 or any other number on a six-sided die, and all those are outcomes. And we said an outcome could be a single item or multiple items. For instance, throwing 2 Ludo die simultaneously, you could experience a multiple outcome. You may have a number on the first die and another number on the second die. Yeah, that's what we mean by a multiple die. Let's get going and get more basic terms as we continue. We are what we call sample space. Sample space. A sample space is a set of all possible outcomes of a given experiment. Is it that all the terms link to each other? So a sample space is a set of all possible outcomes of a given experiment. What do we mean by that? For example, let's go back to the tossing of a die. When a die is thrown, what are the numbers that we expect? What are the possible outcomes? We could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All those are possible outcomes that could appear or that we could observe. Yes, we said all those possible outcomes is what we refer to as the sample space of that particular event or that particular experiment. And the individual members of the sample space is what we call sample point. The individual members is what we call the sample point. Events. Any subset of the sample space of a given experiment is called an event. So an event may be simple or compound. Now, if an event contains a single element, it is called a simple event. And if it contains more elements, it is called a compound event. Complement of probability. Suppose we have an event E as a set of a certain experiment. Now the complement of E is usually denoted by E prime, as you can see, E prime. Usually written like this or like this, E prime. That's the complement of E. Now, what is complement? So as we say, if this E prime is a complement of E, then E prime is a set of all elements in the sample space of the experiment which are not in the set E. So if you have a particular sample space, for instance, throwing a die, the sample space is 1 up to 6. So if event E is even number, you have even numbers as 2, 2, 4, 2, 4, 6. Now that's the event E. So the prime or the complement of event E will be what? 1, 3, and 5. That will be the set. So that's the set of elements, or the set of elements that are in the sample space, but they are not in the set E. Is what we call complement of an event. Thank you very much. We look forward to the next session.